Hey guys, I'm Kate. Welcome back to my channel. And today we're going to go over the results of my questionnaire, What is Bad Writing? Now this is actually a suggestion from the wonderful Miss Nari. They commented on the Writer's Secrets video and made the point that what is bad to some people isn't bad to everyone. But is there a universal bad writing? That is the question. And over 500 of y'all have answered. Thank you so much. And also thank you so much to my patrons who did the first sort of test version of the questionnaire. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. There were 12 questions in total. I'm actually going to skip over some of the questions now that were like, give me a specific example of bad writing. My goal is not to call anyone specifically out or necessarily call a book out, but I will have a live stream where we'll talk about this a little bit more in depth, and I might have some specific examples then, trying to do it in the most like emphasis on learning and not on hating kind of way. Yes. But the first question was, how do you define bad writing? For the most part, there were a lot of answers that were like chunky writing, things that don't flow is bad writing. Several versions of it's not something that you can read, it's just kind of like a feeling, like you feel like it's bad, so therefore it is bad. Writing that takes you out of the story. If you're more focused on what the actual words are on the page than what's going on in the book. Plot holes, out of character dialogue or decisions, unnecessary purple prose, harmful stereotypes, a story with no structure, no payoffs. So this is really where we're getting into this idea in my mind of good prose versus good storytelling. And I think good writing, you need to have both. This is the problem where I get into it when I talk to people, because I can enjoy a story even if the prose isn't my favorite, if everything else about that story is wonderful. Which led me to the second question we're going to cover, skipping the exact question about sharing an example of bad writing. And that's where I had people rank what I defined as the 4 elements of storytelling. Now, I would love if you think there's a different element or an additional element that I totally spaced on to leave a comment down below. But I decided the options were prose, plot, character development, and world building or like immersion into the world. Obviously, some genres are more heavily focused on certain aspects of these. For instance, lit fic might place a heavier emphasis on prose, whereas fantasy might place a heavier emphasis on world building. But I think the best stories should be like excellent across the board on all 4 of these. Another one you could have added in there was maybe pacing, but in my mind, that's kind of in there with the plot. Take all of this as you will. There were standouts in the answers though. There was a clear 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? So the most important aspect, far and away, was character development, which I agree with 1000%. I also took this questionnaire and ended up falling pretty close to what everyone else said. The next most important one was clearly plot. And then mathematically, 3rd place is actually prose and 4th place is world building or immersion, even though more people chose prose as their least important option. Okay, so I'm gonna say 3 and 4 are pretty close, prose and world building, which I thought was fascinating. Okay, this is once again where we get into like what is good storytelling versus good writing and how we kind of speak about writing and trying to decipher what people mean when they say good writing versus bad writing. Oh, it started raining. For instance, when people say things like, oh, the writing was clunky, we all know that they mean that the prose was clunky. But when we say that the writing was bad, I don't always know if they mean that like the storytelling was bad, like the whole book was bad, or was it just the prose? Anyways, so I think this gears up perfectly into the next question. Good job, me. Which is, can you enjoy a story if you find the writing to be bad? 1 was no, never. If the writing is bad, I can't enjoy the story. All the way up to 10, which was yes, definitely other aspects can make up for bad writing. And I actually think we have a pretty even spread. I love to see this kind of thing. Got a nice little distribution going, with a kind of 7 being the most popular answer, though again, the distribution's about what you expect, sort of peaking in the middle. And what I take that as like a it depends sort of way, which is how I feel. For me, if we're missing a lot of punctuation or like things are just kind of really off and not flowing well, then like I can't forgive those. Even in fan fiction, I'm like, okay, enough is enough. But if the writing is just like not the best, I can usually push through if the characters are pretty good. I will also say that sometimes I find a writer to have beautiful writing, but to the detriment of the story. So sometimes I'll just get so into the I wouldn't even call it purple prose necessarily, but like leaning towards purple prose. I'll get so into like the rhythm of the words and the sentences that I actually forget what's going on. And in those instances, I have to put the book down. Other people love that stuff. So it depends. Now, I did ask if the writing is bad, what can make up for that? Even though debatably, we kind of already saw what was most important, and that is echoed here. Great characters, character development, intriguing plot and character arc, good characters, and smut were kind of the most popular answers. I did especially like this answer, which was cool world building, a huge unforeseen plot twist that fits and makes sense, but that would require good writing, question mark, question mark, question mark. These are the things, okay? Writers can be really good at some aspects of storytelling and not as good at other aspects. And so you kind of get this, that's why rating books is so hard, right? Most people, if you use something like Goodreads or the Storygraph, you have sort of a like 5-star system with which to rate things. Lots of people do the same for music, albums, but ultimately sometimes it's like really, really good in some aspects that it kind of bumps up all the others. So for me, if it was a huge twist that made sense and fit, and it would kind of make me rethink the rest of the story, even if there were still things that I didn't totally like. So maybe like a novelty aspect can get you up points and does require good writing. Next, I asked if you'd ever DNF'd a book for bad writing. DNF meaning did not finish. Put it down, got 10, 15, 50% of the way through and was like, not for me. Yes at 85.1% and no at 14.9%. I am fascinated by you 77 people who have not DNF'd a book for bad writing. Are you just incredible at picking out books you know you'll like? Or are you the kind that like pushes through because you know that there's something there that's worthwhile for you, even if it's just learning from the bad writing, which we will get to. I then asked, how often do you DNF books? The majority said occasionally, only if the book's really bad. About a quarter of people said pretty often. As soon as I realized the book's not for me, I put it down. We had about 10% of people saying that they've only DNF'd on accident, and 4.2% of people said never. I finish every book that I start. Next up, I really wanted to drill into this concept of hate reading, hate watching. It's often been said in the larger like YouTube community, but also like specifically in BookTube, that you can get a lot more views for being negative about a book. And sometimes it's kind of fun to push through and hate read something. And so I was just curious how many people have done that. I am personally not a hate reader, though I have hate watched something, but honestly, I really don't do that often because I'd much prefer to just like watch something or spend time on something that I like. I don't find a lot of joy out of watching something that I know I dislike, but occasionally, especially in like a group setting, it's really fun to make fun of something that's bad and enjoy that sort of camaraderie. So 37.3% said yeah, maybe once or twice. 28.6% of people said I've never hate read anything. 21.8% said I've read a book all the way through to the end and only realized I hated it after finishing, which is probably where I'd classify myself. I am very DNF friendly, but I have gotten to the end of the book hoping that something might happen and then reflecting back and being like, that was the worst. Or even when it's something you've enjoyed, but it ended so poorly that it then detracts from the overall experience. And then 64 people, or 12.4%, said that they have hate read a lot of things, at least 5+ books. And this next one I was really excited to see, which was how would you currently rate your own writing on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the worst thing you've ever read and 10 being the best thing you've ever read. Initially when I did this, I had like the trashiest trash of all trash, and I was like, I should change that. I was excited for this question because I think in a lot of ways we are our own harshest critics. But if you're also on AuthorTube often enough to see where I'd like posted this questionnaire just in like a comment on a video and on the community tab, maybe you're often seeking out writing stuff more and therefore like maybe a little bit farther on in your journey. Who knows? We got a couple things going on, but I was very happy to see that the most common answer was a 6, followed exceedingly closely by a 7 and then a 5. So on the whole, people are really saying like, I'm pretty good, you know? The next most common answers were a 4, then an 8, then a 3, 2, 1, 9, and no one answered a 10. I don't find that altogether surprising. I am a little bit sad to think that some people feel like they're 1s. I assure you, you are not. We often only get to read published works. So even if we've read really bad published works, you know, most of the time they've gone through the process of having other people see them. So in some ways they're like an elevated version compared to our own writing that only we have seen so far. So I do understand perhaps rating yourself a little bit lower or being nervous to say you're higher, but you are not a 1, I assure you. If you were at all seeking out writing material, I don't think you're a 1. Also, for the people who rated themselves a 7+, how long would you say you've been a 7+? At what point in like your writing journey did you say, yeah, you know what, I'm actually pretty good? I would love to know. The next question was, which book do you think exemplifies amazing writing? And this is another one that we'll touch on the stream so that I can share better examples. It'll just be easier. So again, link down below if you want to come hang out and chat with a bunch of us all at the same time about this topic. Next, I asked if you would rather finish a poorly written book, movie, or TV show. Of course, there was also poetry. I just didn't put that in there because, as you'll see the results, and maybe this is just me interpreting the results, but I find that poems are often much shorter. So I think if it was a bad one, people would plow through it faster and might have picked it. That was my logic. Anyways, 70.1% would rather finish a poorly written movie, 15.1% a poorly written TV show, and then 14.9% a poorly written novel. My own take on this was just ultimately, is it that you'd rather spend less time on the poorly written thing? Alternatively, I think really great actors, really beautiful scenery, amazing directing can make up potentially for a poorly written movie or TV show. So I don't find it altogether surprising, but I'd love to know your thoughts as you answer this question. And for the final question, this was actually a suggestion by one of my patrons who had gone through the questionnaire first. Thank you, Purple Ghost Cat, which was, have you ever read a book with bad writing in order to analyze and learn from it as a sort of what not to do for your own writing? So we have about 20 less responses at a 495 total. Still a good number. 39.8% of people said that they had in the past, maybe once or twice. 30.7% of people said that they haven't yet, but they thought it would be interesting and they might try it in the future, which I really love. 16% of people said no, I don't think it would be worth my time. And 13.5% of people said yes, I make a point to pick up bad books so that I can learn from them. I think a lot of finding your own writing style is reading a lot and determining, oh, this isn't for me. It's also in the same vein, you know, emulating your favorite writers as you sort of learn and grow. As well, I have moments with books that really stick out to me that I'm like, I would never do that to readers because you have pissed me off so much. I'm thinking of the only book I have ever physically thrown across the room. But that is the end of the results. Please do comment down below. Let me know if any of these surprised you. Let me know if there was a question I missed that you would be curious about. We can try and do it during the live stream. Let me know if you had any further thoughts on any individual question. And finally, let me know if you have any concrete plans in place, sort of action items to get better at writing, to kind of boost yourself, whether you are at a 1 and want to get to a 7, or you're at a 7 and want to try to get to an 8. I would love to know. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all very soon on the live stream and also with the new video. Bye!